With you. Let's just talk about the week that we just had, because when these tariffs were announced until tonight, Ali Velshi, I've said it all week. I have spoken to more investors here and abroad, business leaders here and abroad, all week long, and I cannot find one single person, even those who support the Trump, who understand a coherent strategy and are down with it.
Because there's not one. And I think it's important to understand two things that are happening right now that are unprecedented. One, as you mentioned, that consumer confidence is down. This is surveyed by the University of Michigan. Consumer sentiment down to the lowest level since they started recording it in 1952, down lower than it was in the Great Recession, 2008, 2009. Number one. Number two, the guarantee in the American financial system is that when the stock market goes down, which it does from time to time, the safe money, not the money that you individuals take and maybe put under your mattress, the safe money goes into the U.S. dollar, and the way you invest in the U.S. dollar is through bonds. That didn't happen. So for whatever was supposed to happen,
the biggest red flag.
The
and
money's supposed to come out of the market.
I don't follow bonds. Why does that matter? The bond market is your daddy.
And it's your dollar. So you take the money comes out of the stock market. You buy bonds. Bonds go up in price because everything that the demand increases for. The yield, the interest rate goes down. So that's what you should have seen last week. And you saw interest rates spiking, which meant that money from sovereign wealth funds and from other countries and from people who think the U.S. dollar is the safe haven, for whatever reason, was not a safe haven last week. That was confidence in America. That was confidence in the American dollar. If there was some grand strategy behind this, that'd be amazing. But there doesn't appear to be. We imposed tariffs of 50% on the country of Lesotho. And all they do is they knit stuff for Chinese factories that we buy, jobs that we're not looking to get back in America. So I just want to know what the strategy is. And every investor wanted to know what the strategy is. And no one can provide that information other than saying you're watching the art of the deal in progress. You're certainly not watching the art of the deal in progress.
Let's talk about this, okay? I mean, the whole thing is so overwhelming, but right there, for the consumer out there, right, who's saying, I don't even invest in the markets. Scott Bessent said a week ago, Wall Street has done so well over the last years, maybe it's time for them to take a back seat because our strategy is going to be about Main Street. Right. Well, if you live on Main Street, now your borrowing costs, right, because bond yields are going up, your credit, what it costs for you to get a mortgage, for you to get a loan, for your credit card payments, on the eve of prices of many, many things going up because inflation is going to spike because of the tariffs. Right. So where is the White House going to find a narrative? Or more importantly, where does Congress when they go home? Because when you've got this double whammy of the stock market going down and bond yields right up your hoonie, everybody's getting screwed.
Well, and also, Trump has so misread his mandate. If he had a mandate, which he loves to say he did, it was the price of eggs, right? It was bacon. It was the weave with bacon. Bacon. It was too expensive. He was going to make things cheaper. So what has he done? He has done something wildly inflationary. So you have these people who he said, and by the way, there are so many clips of him saying, I'm going to make it cheaper. I'm going to lower prices. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. And, you know, that is an undeliverable, right? We saw with Harris. It's impossible to lower prices. Capitalism doesn't like it. Here we are now. He said he was going to lower prices. What has he done? He's made things more expensive and he's made debt more expensive. And that we're in, you know, you're going to see people are unhappy. And I think the reason that America is no longer the king of capital where people want to go is because of one person.
We still are. Right. Let's be clear. We still are, but things have definitely taken a notch down. And that's where there is sort of this national security foreign policy component here. Because when we talk about who actually likes what happened this week, it's Putin. It's Putin. It is China. And even though this is really bad for China as well, in their wildest dreams, the goal was, let's devalue the dollar. And people might not realize the dollar being the reserve currency is why we live the most prosperous lives. Right. It's why the United States gets to be who it is. And for those guys to watch the dollar start to tumble, I can't think of a greater gift.
No, our enemies are celebrating. President Mayhem has been attacking and destroying lots of things over the last 4 months. But for the most part, it hasn't really impacted rich Americans, right? He started to blow up the global order and things like NATO. Then he moved over to the Pentagon. Rich people generally don't have their kids serving in the military. Attacked something like the Department of Education. Rich people send their kids to private school. Now he hit the market. right? And he's blowing up the market. And rich, especially Republicans, care a lot about the disruption, the chaos, and the crumbling of the stability and the confidence in our dollar and in our economy. And that's where it's really hitting them where it hurts. And it's also compounded by the fact that working people care because they have 401ks, they have retirements, and they're seeing layoffs happen all across the country in federal jobs. So he's actually getting it harder from two critical sides more than he ever has. I think even in his first term, he never caught a week like this where he was getting it from his own influential Republicans. The same guys who sat with him on in the dais at inauguration are now hitting him and trying to move him. And that's why he crumbled, he backed down, he responded so quickly, and he retreated. We saw for the first time Trump retreated this week.
There's another group when it comes to layoffs, though. Businesses, big and small in this country, right? Put federal workers aside. For businesses, even if Wall Street was excited about the 90-day pause, and for a day they were excited because at the very least it was relief. Because on Tuesday morning, when you thought there was 50+% tariffs on everybody and anybody, that felt like economic disaster, immediate. So when they got the pause, at least the investor class said, okay, I'm going to breathe. But for businesses, okay, this notion that Peter Navarro pushes, that sometimes Howard Lutnick does, that sometimes Scott Bessent does, that we're going to bring all manufacturing back, that we're going to onshore it in the United States of America, that costs trillions of dollars and takes north of 20 years.
Talking about Hunter Biden's laptop right now. You're using the wrong bathroom. I miss eggs. We're talking about global economic warfare. I mean, you know, in my family, should we buy a house now? We got to hold off on all this stuff. We don't know what is going on. And, you know, that can work to your advantage. My daughter says, can I have ice cream? It's like, look, there's too much uncertainty right now, sweetheart. But this is not the conversation that we should be having, that the economy sucks. So it's a mess.
Well, it's a little bit. I actually think Larry Fink at BlackRock, the CEO of BlackRock, said it best. America used to be the great global stabilizer. Now we're the great global destabilizer. And that's so distressing. And it's such a home goal. It's so unnecessary. And the changes we're seeing are not for the better for anybody. And all the CEOs I talk to, and I've talked to a lot over the last couple of weeks, are really anxious about what this is doing to America's reputation and to the actuality of doing business.
Do you remember when Donald Trump used to talk about the stock market and say things like this?
The stock market is soaring to record levels. Their values are going up every single day. We have made America wealthy again. Look at our stock market. Look at that market. Look at your 401ks. If he gets in, you have the greatest depression in the history of this country. Your stocks will go to hell.
Maybe this is why some people on Wall Street are starting to question whether Trump isn't just erratic, but actually maybe isn't all there. I mean, that's been some of the reporting this week, is that they're actually concerned that this is so irrational. It cannot be explained by a person in their right mind, because Donald Trump understands how important the stock market is. And he used to care.
He used to care. And last week, if he really wanted to handle this the right way, I mean, everyone would agree that maybe America has been taken advantage of with some of these tariffs. So go to some of these nations and say, okay, we're going to start at 20%, but have a private negotiation with them. And then say, okay, can we get it down to 10% and go back and forth? They know exactly what entity in each of these countries they want to try and get rid of or reduce. That's the art of the deal, by the way. That is not how this. That is not how this happened.
This is his big thing.
He's been talking about it for forever.
And he finally got to do it, and then he didn't know how to do it.
But you know what the biggest disappointment is? To your point that people are now worried about what's going on inside of his head. Where are the Republicans? Where are the Republicans to stand up to this, other than a couple?
Maybe a week or two, and they will break down.
But the Republicans,
because it's going to start to hurt at home.
Republicans have been nowhere all along. This is consistent behavior for them. But what's concerning is that America, you know, the American economy is one of the great glories of the world. It's one of the 7 wonders of the world.
It's been a wild week in the markets and economy, and Trump's tariffs continue to stoke chaos and uncertainty, retaliation from China, recession fears. We're up over 100% tariffs coming back from China. It's been quite the week.
A roller coaster week on Wall Street.
So President Trump's trade war is sending markets on a wild ride this week.
The United States, post-World War II, was a global stabilizer. We are the global
destabilizer.
We're living in crazy town right now, and the markets are swinging wildly.
There will be a 90-day pause on the reciprocal tariffs.
Let's be clear what happened. Who capitulated here and why? It is the White House who capitulated.
We don't know what comes after the 90 days. Trump doesn't know what comes after the 90 days. Businesses certainly don't know.
I don't know. I don't know. You know what? That's what I've heard a lot last week. I don't know.
What a wild week it has been.
A wild week, a lot of I don't knows, because if the people in charge don't know, then very few other people can know anything. The top 500 companies down over 10% since Trump came into office. The Dow, 9%. And yet, many of Trump's enablers are trying to sell failure as a win. Headlines on Fox, Trump outsmarts the PhDs, victory. He's thinking 3 steps ahead. Why 3? Call it 6. Just wake us when something actually works. Inside the White House, we still have evidence and information. In fact, there's a lot of hardworking journalists at all kinds of outlets, from the Times to the Post to this Yahoo story, about the Kremlin-esque praise of Trump.
What we have here is the market continue to turn against Trump, and the people that run it as professionals have no faith in him. No faith. And look, they should, if anything, be much more amenable to a Republican president. Right? The Republicans generally are the party that they're not even pro free market. It's more like they're pro capital, they're pro big business, they're pro the capitalist class. And that sometimes means being free market, but that sometimes means rigging the game in favor of the rich and wealthy and well-connected. But if you're a stockbroker, you're not really there because you believe in free markets. You want to make money for yourself and or your clients. And you do that by any means necessary. Of course, I'm going to say operating legally, at least wink, wink, right? You know what I mean? But Donald was supposed to deliver big gains for them. He was supposed to deliver huge gains. Gains were significant under Biden, let's be clear. But Trump was supposed to take it to the next level, even higher. Your 401ks, we're gonna and Trumpism, we're gonna go up 1,000,000%. You know what I mean? That was the whole theoretical argument, right? From Trump and his allies. But it hasn't worked out that way. Because Trump's tariffs are done in such a way that they give no confidence to investors, to workers, to consumers, to stockbrokers, to foreign governments, to banks, to anybody. And the consequences are that the markets are volatile as F. And F is not a stand-in for fudge. It's for a 4-letter word that I don't usually say. Right? This is what's happening. There's a reason why the market spiked 10%, 8%, and then went down another 5% the next day. Because even when Donald gets a temporary win, he doesn't have the intellect or the consistency or the moorings in a kind of process of making decisions that gives people confidence. Because again, even if you support tariffs, even if you do, the way Trump's doing them makes it impossible for anyone to plan strategically around them.